Okay, welcome to the final week and the final chapters of Tuesdays with Morrie. I didn't assign another library video this week. I think it would be nice if you were able to rent Tuesdays with Morrie. It's a great movie. I think it's really good to watch after you've read the book. And I also think that if you can find the Ted Koppel Nightline interviews with Morrie, you'd find them very interesting as well. One student suggested looking on YouTube. I know they're copyrighted, so I could not post that link, but you might be able to find them. Well, let's look at the final chapters here. Some things that just caught my attention on page 154. At the very top, he writes about the mind, the body, the spirit. And that's one of Duquesne University's parts of their mission statement, to address all of those areas of each student as a human being: mind, body, and spirit. And at the bottom I wrote, he talks about what's important to us, and it's like, what is important to us? What do we end up, and I'm not talking religiously, worshiping, but just what takes our time, our thoughts, our energy, and what's our goal ultimately for meaning and fulfillment? In the end of our life, if we could look back, somebody would say, I'm going to give you one more day, one more week, one more month, one more year. Would we have spent it differently? Well, right now, each of us has an opportunity to decide. On page 156, look, no matter where you live, the biggest defect we human beings have is our short-sightedness. We don't see what we could be. We should be looking at our potential, stretching ourselves into everything we can become. But if you're surrounded by people who say, I want mine now, you end up with a few people with everything, a military to keep the poor ones from rising up and stealing it. 157, in the beginning of life, we are infants. We need others to survive, right? And at the end of life, when you get like me, you need others to survive. In the italics on page 159, A's and B's, perfectionism. There's really no such thing as perfectionism. Nothing's perfect. And yet, things are perfect in their imperfection. That's the grand paradox. There's a Zen saying, and they incorporated it into the movie The Last Samurai. Samurai spent his life looking for the perfect cherry blossom. And just before he died, he realized they're all perfect. They're all unique. They're all imperfect. On page 162, he told Koppel he wanted to die with serenity. He shared his latest aphorism. Don't let go too soon, but don't hang on too long. One of the interesting things we need to consider when we deal with people who may be in the later stages of life or terminal illness, perhaps we're a counselor at a hospital or hospice, it's important to consider living wills. With so much modern technology, we can extend life quantitatively for a very long period of time. Qualitatively, that may not be the best decision, but to allow somebody's life to progress and to end naturally. And that's everybody's own decision. But it's an important thing to talk about with your clients. Page 164, the 12th Tuesday, we talk about forgiveness. Forgive yourself before you die, then forgive others. And I wrote, it's important to ask for forgiveness, but it's just as important to accept forgiveness. And if you don't get forgiveness, it's important to, if you've tried to make amends, if you've asked for forgiveness, then it's no longer within your control. You have the ability to forgive yourself. Then forgive other people. I've always found it harder to forgive myself and to accept that forgiveness than to forgive others. Forgiving others has always been an easy thing for me. And on 166 he talks again about regrets. You can get stuck on the regrets of what should have happened. That doesn't help you when you get to where I am. The last sentence in that chapter, page 168. All I was afraid of was saying goodbye. On page 172, I underlined at the very bottom of the page the sensation of accepting what was happening. And I would say not only accepting death, but all that is life and was life. Being at peace, thinking about a dream he had. He wrote, that's what we're all looking for, a certain peace with the idea of dying. If we know in the end that we can ultimately have that peace with dying, then we can finally do the really hard thing, which is make peace with living. I think that's a profound statement. Carl Rogers said it's an awfully hard thing to live in the Gloria tapes. And even he began talking about what Warden and Rando began using in their theory, that death ends a life, but not a relationship. I think that's very true. Page 176. Every day is average, and yet no day is average. Another paradox. It was so simple, so average. I was actually a little disappointed. I figured he'd fly to Italy, have lunch with the president. I guess they asked him about what would the perfect day be. After all these months lying there, unable to move a leg or a foot, how would he find perfection in such an average day? And I realized this was the whole point. (178) talks about stopping and renewing. Stopping and renewing. The italics on 180. Second wave says, I like this story about the wave. Let's see. I'll read it. Heard a nice little story the other day, Morrie says. He closes his eyes for a moment, and I wait. Okay, the story's about a little wave bobbing along the ocean, having a grand old time. He's enjoying the wind and the fresh air until he notices the other waves in front of him crashing against the shore. My God, this is terrible, the wave says. Look what's going to happen to me. Then along comes another wave. He sees the first wave, looking grim, and it says to him, why do you look so sad? First wave says, you don't understand, we're all going to crash. All of us waves are going to be nothing. Isn't it terrible? The second wave says, no, you don't understand. You're not a wave. You're part of the ocean. I smile. Morrie closes his eyes again. Part of the ocean, he says. Part of the ocean. I watch him breathe. In and out, in and out. That's probably a good way to end that. We're all part of this ocean.